आ गया है पैसा, and then we took screenshot, sent it to our family कि देखो हम गधे नहीं हैं basically.
देखो माँ ये चेक देखो.
मतलब इंडिया में you can't be like कि हाँ you know
मैं घर छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ.
मतलब माँ बाप बोले ठीक है जाओ.
I read somewhere that entrepreneurs are the only people who work 80-hour weeks to avoid working 40-hour weeks. Granted, there is a certain appeal in being the captain of your own team to rise with the India growth story, but every voyage in this startup universe, like any average Cricket World Cup final, brings with it a series of fortunate and unfortunate events, whether it's locking in your Series A funding or locking out your co-founders from the meeting room after a fight. So, if you are in search of a personalized therapy session to understand what it really takes to be a startup founder and navigate success and failures, you have arrived at your destination. Welcome to Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan. Our guest on today's show calls himself the fintech infrastructure guy on LinkedIn. Why wouldn't he? He's built a company which is just 7 years, is enabling many of the big names in finance to process and price credit in new and innovative ways and helping to bring financial empowerment to the farthest corners of Bharat. Please welcome Rajat Deshpande, co-founder and CEO of FinBox. Rajat, great to have you on board Crafting Bharat.
Thank you so much for having me.
You sound a bit low. Let's raise the tempo. We'll see how we can go about it. The question is, what lessons can all the Sharma ji ka betas and betis learn from Deshpande ji ka beta and his FinBox journey? Let's find out in our first segment titled The Incubator. Rajat, let's turn back the hands of time, as they say. Before we start talking like adults, college के वो रंगीन दिन याद करते हैं. As a mechanical engineering graduate from IIT Bombay, take us through those days. I want to know the portrait of a mechanical engineering graduate from IIT Bombay. Are they high-strung, bade khab, or, rebels, silent rebels rather? Your funniest memory from those days?
No, I think they are sort of high-strung for the first day. So everybody is, at IIT is essentially topper of their school or, it's finished, and they have had adulation in the family, ki, this is a smart guy and all that. But once you land, you realize that, everybody is, equally, if not more smart. They've done more. You find people have done international Olympiads and all of that. सब शाने हैं और ये तो मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि ऐसा होता है. So there were people who had done NTSC, whatnot, and you're like, अरे ये तो मुझे बताया ही नहीं किसी ने. And that is when a lot of folks really it really hits them that they're no longer special.
All right.
And that's very interesting. It's a very interesting feeling. It's also for like a young sort of freshman, it is also disconcerting because you don't know anymore how do you get back to your game. So, that's what.
So considering resetting became the default setting for you,
yes.
Let's take that journey forward on what FinBox was about, because you mentioned earlier in an interview that being stubborn is actually what worked for FinBox in your initial days, in a sense that you never thought you would be unsuccessful, and they say there is a thin line between genius and insanity. So I want to understand from you, what made you so sure that you were on the right track, since India's digital payments and lending revolution was yet to take off them, and there wasn't much bureau penetration, and none of you were engineers early on. So was it anything like we see on TV shows like Silicon Valley? I remember that TechCrunch disrupt scene very, 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 very clearly. ऐसा कुछ हुआ था आपके साथ?
So I don't know if you know, but FinBox essentially was founded 2 times. So we did like a personal finance management app in 2015. That didn't really work. We sort of went back to our jobs and restarted FinBox in the B2B avatar that we see again after about 18 months or 2 years, I think. When we built our first version of the product, and my wife was Maike mein thi, and me and one of our co-founders, Srijan, was sitting at home, and we load tested it with like 2,000 servers, and it failed. And then we wrote to AWS saying you have not given us enough bandwidth or enough bandwidth in S3, the storage service. And after and we made like a hue and cry, and we went to some startup guys and all that, and we raised it up to the highest levels we could. And we realized that the bandwidth we were asking was 60% of entire Asia Pacific bandwidth. So we were having a bunch
but they did support you.
They did support us. Yes.
आपका चल रहा है.
हमारा बिल्कुल चल रहा है. And I think they were, the interesting pieces were that they were super supportive. They didn't say that you guys are stupid or anything, but we were, frankly. But the interesting piece was that we got so involved and we learned so much in that period that these experiences kept building, and it was a huge train of experiences that we were going through, and it was so much fun that we never thought we could be. Success or not success was not stuff that we were thinking about. We were thinking about building this, and we knew that once we built it, it would be super.
Messaging के तौर पे अब की बार दरिया पार. That was the idea. All right. You once described your startup journey as a sort of a roller coaster ride which oscillates between exhilaration and depression. All right. Now you mentioned about having fun. Let's start with the exhilaration part. Tell us about the first, say, major client win. Since when we look at a product that is large and strategic, like an API platform to a bank, that can have a very long sales cycle, let's say 6 to 8 months. Was there ever a situation that if you didn't secure a client, the future of FinBox was at stake and so on? Or was it because that you worked on a lot of B2B cases, the fact that you are, in a sense, selling before you are building? Was that the experience?
No, absolutely. I think the first sale that we did was our Device Connect alternative data product, which is like an anonymous sort of device data product which takes data, and then we build credit models on it. And it was a prepaid sale, and it was our first sale. And it I think the first sale that we made was about more than $1 million committed, which was insane. And we were like, ye to ho hi nahi sakta.
Money.
And when that money hit the bank for the first time, so we were just counting zeros, and then we couldn't log in बहुत देर तक, and we tried to log in and we got it, and when we saw it, we were like कि कुछ तो आ गया है पैसा, and then we took screenshot, sent it to our family कि देखो हम गधे नहीं हैं basically.
देखो माँ ये चेक देखो.
So, and it was, अपने को भी लगता है ना कि क्या पता हम we are not that smart. रोज you've built it, but कुछ हो तो रहा नहीं है.
Market is validating your business, so it gives you the confidence.
And as people also, it's very primal, because we used to get into a Santro, go eat idlis. 4 लोग बैठे हैं, सबकी नौकरियां छुड़वा दी हैं. So, and the younger guys also, उनके parents तुम्हें phone कर रहे हैं कि तुमने इनको भी अपने जैसा बना दिया. अब what are you going to sort of do? And all of this sort of suddenly there's resolution. It's like नहीं, हम लोग we are sort of an entity. We are something.
We are in business.
We are in business.
All right. You were, and that went for, when we look at it going forward, especially from a funding perspective, you were bootstrapped for a very long time. But in that period between 2018 and 19, I think to meet your payroll targets, you had to approach an angel investor. I think it was Anup Pai, who cut a check without asking any questions. So describe to us how that meeting went, and as you mentioned, finding the right people to support your business. Uske बारे में क्या?
Absolutely. So these are those days when this ILFS sort of crisis was unfolding, and we didn't realize, we were never NBFC folks, so we didn't realize why customers are not sort of winding down new businesses, etc., which we were a part of, and they suddenly shut off. And our invoices were held, and of course our customers, large NBFCs, etc., they had bigger fish to fry, and things to deal with. And we had no money to sort of pay salaries. So, we tried everything, and last May we went to, our angel investor, and it is interesting that, people who've done this, they know that this is coming one day. It's not a surprise to people.
They've been there and they've
yeah,
seen it.
Anup had already built a company, and I'm sure he knew ki kya chal raha hai. And, we just told him, and he just,
How did you feel? The fact that, he cut a check, no questions, what was going through your mind?
We were deeply thankful, of course, and relieved. And we, mostly thankful though.
At least problem solving from that perspective, you now have technologies like Gen AI, which is supposed to be solving a lot of problems. Everyone is talking about Gen AI. I read a report on this, on Gen AI, which included a sector-wise impact on gross value added impact for industries, where BFSI was ranked highly. It was an outlier actually with substantial impact compared to the likes of, say, retail, education or healthcare. Now, besides generating sort of personalized credit profiles, fraud detection, these are the use cases which we can see. But in terms of next level use cases for Gen AI, which is relevant for FinBox, what would you say?
So I think, I look at Gen AI with at least two, in two different ways, right? One is the customer experience layer, which is, how does the customer interact with financial services and how does that change, right? And you could say, parts of what you've said or mostly stuff that gets talked about is in this area on Gen AI. Right, but there is an operational nature to Gen AI, which is essentially how are people writing code, right? Which is essentially how do you build software and are your workflows changing? So that's like internal. But then in enterprise SaaS, there's a lot of implementation piece that go in. So when a customer is onboarding, onto our software, they're also wanting us to integrate with the universe of software that they've already bought. And BFSI is a huge software buyer, right? So that glue piece, that implementation piece is bespoke and it is huge. That's a large part of the software economy, the software ecosystem. Large part, so, large software vendors have a huge army of consultants writing this glue code and all of this implementation happens. So our sense is the operational aspect in the B2B SaaS space, which is essentially how do you, one, be faster and be more, high quality in building your own product, sort of using Gen AI and code generation, etc. And then how do you speed up implementation times, as you integrate into newer systems. These are things that I'm more excited about, albeit much more boring. But, you get this right, the way software gets delivered, consumed, tried, changes meaningfully. And this is what I'm most excited about in Gen AI.
All right. So taking that forward, considering time to market, let's say, reduces substantially with the help of Gen AI, how have digitally native businesses like yours leveraged your partnership with AWS? आपने एक कहानी तो बता दी, but in terms of the scale in, scale out and leveraging, say, the power of machine learning to stay ahead of your competitors. Tell us about this.
2-3 things. I think, of course, AWS has a lot of, GPU compute available. So, at a very, very foundational level, you need compute to build AI. It's just a very compute heavy piece. And this whole, as GPUs are in shortage. You can't just get it. But they are available readily on AWS, and then overall the setup and the entire layer that you need to set up is very easily available. And I think there's a bunch of partnerships that AWS has done with NVIDIA as well, and all of that helps us to get going very, very easily, because the engineers themselves are learning all of this stuff. If they have to go grounds up and set it up, it's just that much more difficult. So that's, we've relied on AWS for all of our compute up until now, and we've found it, fairly easy now. We've done this for 7 years.
All right. It's a springboard for you to leap into the future.
Well, that's your 15 minutes of fame with Rajat Deshpande of FinBox about the journey behind running an innovative credit infra platform. It's easy, just like one of those math Olympiads I tried to give once in my lifetime and swore never to give again. Well, how about a mental workout with some rapid fire questions for the next 5 minutes, Rajat? As the meme says, Jaldi bol, kal panvel jana hai. So within a minute per answer for our next segment titled The Accelerator. And your time starts now. Between the balance of hustle and process, how do you achieve it, how to hyperscale? Because there's one part hustle, one part process for a successful startup. How to scale?
That's a great question. And I think, every startup founder is trying to find that answer all the time. And I'll say this, balance between hustle and process changes with respect to scale. So as you are early stage, you are the aggressor. You want all you want is hustle. You just want there's nothing to defend. There's no asset that you have. There's no process. There's nothing. No customer service even, right? And as you become larger, you become a company, and there's a lot to defend. There's a lot of reputation that you have to protect. There is customer experience on various layers. There comes process that you have to set up. And one piece is that hustle only works in small groups. So, if you're a smaller sort of set of guys, 7, 10, you can really hustle and get stuff done. Everybody knows everything and you just rely on instinct. But as you become larger, you have to divide up work, you have to parallelize, you have to have process.
Just before the buzzer, your answer finished. And this is a wake-up call for you. It's not always about the hustle. It's a balance between hustle and process. All right, next question. How do you know if you're meant to be a B2B or a B2C startup?
How did we know? I can tell you, I don't know how others sort of think. Apna experience hai ki, even when we built a B2C, so we did B2C first. As soon as we got 1,000 downloads, we were like, chalo ab paisa banate hain. That's like the trait of a B2B sort of company. B2C is all about chalo download karte hain. At least from outside, we see it like that. And you want to build engagement and your monetization is far into the future. Nobody actually cares at the start what the monetization is going to be if you're growing very fast in B2C. In B2B, you track money made. Essentially, the metrics are recurring revenue, gross margin, etc., and they can be set up after the first month, right? So, and second is, the kind of problems that you're choosing. Are you solving, people's problems? Are you solving companies' problems, right? So, if you're confused, and very few companies are confused. There are a set of companies which are confused, are we B2B, B2C, but they're very few.
Sometimes it's also about customer segmentation. You think you're solving for one customer segment and suddenly you find that you've got a wider cohort of customers coming towards you because you've solved their problem. Absolutely. All right. Next question. If a startup in its early days is more a social activity than a business, as you have said in one interview, what happens to the introverts among us? Because if social activity hai, baat to karni padegi. Now, if you are let's say a technical founder, you're just coding, you're like, boss, mujhe coding karna hai, bas yahi mera kaam hai. But as you mentioned, it's all about talking to customers, talking to investors, talking to people, your team, build up that culture. So how to handle this?
No, social activity within the team is also very important, right? So
what do you do? Team building का क्या होता है आपका?
नहीं, शुरू में तो you just like people and all of you are introverts. उनमें से एक secret extrovert होता है. हाँ, मतलब if you don't talk to customers and there is the guy in the team who's like कि चलो कुछ
Are you that extrovert?
I am not that extrovert at all.
But I believe you're trying your hand at stand-up comedy.
I am trying. That's a revelation to me as well.
You learn something about yourself in the process.
Learn something about yourself. And I think, it is very important to sort of build very quickly and build and test. Testing is talking to people. Building is talking internally and sort of pulling all-nighters, which is also internal motivation, etc. So, ye sara, this is, and in the early stages, this is just, it can't be driven by outside incentives. It is just, you liking what you are doing and talking to people about what you are doing. Right?
Okay. All right. 9 years ago, you authored a
piece called, how to launch a product on a shoestring budget. So, would your advice given then still be the same today?
So, I think the operating word is shoestring budget, right? So, if you are a startup founder, you better, find ways to do stuff for free or at shoestring budgets, because, you're not going to get infinite amounts of money to start. So, if your plan is ki, if I get money, I can build this, that is not a plan, right? So, whatever you have to do has to be, cheeky and sort of very, very, it has to be innovative in distribution as well as not only in building the product or product features, but how do you get that validation has to either be super, super innovative, or then you have to spend tens of years trying to do it very slowly without using the shoestring budget techniques.
Okay. All right. आखिरी सवाल मेरी तरफ से, from a product manager to a startup founder who likes stand-up comedy, what has this journey taught you?
One piece is that product is not everything. Distribution is very, very important. Second is, you have to have, real gumption because you are on a roller coaster. एक दिन, so there are days where day के start में लगता है कि यार हम तो बहुत ही तेज है, हम तो start है, हम तोप है, हमने सब सही, we pick the right market, this that, और हमसे कोई जीत नहीं सकता. By the end of the day हम लोग we are talking चाय पीते हुए कि हम तो सब गधे हैं, पता नहीं क्या सोच के करने गए, ये भी नहीं आता, ये भी नहीं आता, ये भी नहीं आता, जो करने जाते हैं सब खराब होता है. So this is the same day. 6-7 घंटे में ये कई बार 3-4 बार हो जाता है, and you have to have stomach for it. And third is of course you have to have family support. मतलब इंडिया में you can't be like कि हाँ
मैं घर छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ,
मतलब माँ बाप बोले ठीक है जाओ.
Okay, get out.
But if you are married specifically, you need to communicate well. नहीं तो मतलब it's just crazy.
Family is very
important.
But an important message there you've also given, that product gives you the thrills, but distribution pays the bills.
So yes, exactly.
You need to be mindful of that. Those are your 1-minute mantras on crafting Bharat, a startup guide with Rajat Deshpande of FinBox. Well, we've heard about Rajat's journey with FinBox and the impact that it had on him. Now he dons the role of an advisor, where he'll respond to questions sent by you, the audience. The advisor. Our first question comes from Ashish Ved, an angel investor. He asks, can you elaborate on the 3-1-0 credit workflow, and how are you making sure that it doesn't have any human intervention, and how safe is it from both the lender and the borrower perspective from a technology standpoint? Your thoughts?
Right. So, one piece is that there are certain loan products where it can be without human intervention. So that's called straight through processing basically. And how that works is that, one, you have to ingest all of the data that you can get that informs your decision making. If you don't build a data rich system, then you can't really assess a borrower. Second, you have to have sophisticated decision systems and sophisticated fraud management system. Fraud is very, very important, of course. In any digital lending setup, you don't really meet the borrower. Right, so there are syndicates of folks who try to sort of download apps and then they try to game the system. There are people who stack up a lot of loans very, very fast because credit bureau reporting is at a lag. All of this stuff you have to know and you have to control, and you have to build systems that do this at scale at very, very high speed. Right, so that's what sort of we've been doing, and we've been sort of in each of these areas we've gone fairly deep. And that's what brings this together. And ultimately, there will always be a catch-up between, fraudsters and delinquency driving sort of folks. But that's our role in the ecosystem. And we work very hard with our customers and partners to sort of make sure that they don't suffer any losses, and we keep improving our systems.
Zindagi ka safar ka.
Bilkul.
All right.
Our second question comes from Kunal Arora, an angel investor and startup mentor, and he asks, in a digitally profound landscape, how is embedded lending superior to traditional loan processing?
So see, embedded lending is strictly not superior in, it is different, it is another channel for origination, right? So, any large financial services company has multiple channels of origination. So starting with their branch network, which is the first channel. Second is the DSA network, which is which came after the branch network. Third is their own digital apps or websites, etc. These are owned channels, owned digital. Then there is the embedded finance channel, which is essentially partnerships with players who have a large customer base. And then another channel is now ONDC, etc. Right? So we are talking about the fourth sort of generation of lending where embedded finance sort of fits in, and it gives access to a very, very curated pool of customers. So for example, if you are on a brokerage app, embedded on a brokerage app, you know that all of these folks are they have a brokerage account, they have some securities, some mutual funds, etc. And if you want to target these folks with salaried personal loans, you can build a strategy and you can get very, very specific kinds of audience from here, right? So this is all possible and you can get it at scale. Because if you build this in your own channel, how do you target these people, say, through marketing? It is just very hard, right? So this is what embedded finance does. It gives you a curated set of folks in a very large funnel, right? And that is an ability which is hard. So that is how it is different.
That is how it's different. See how effective that bell is.
Bell is like scary.
All right, our third question comes from Debapriya Chakraborty from Entrepreneur, the business incubator, and she asks, if money could talk, what financial advice could it give?
So money would say, please invest at least 20%. And I think every resource should be invested at least 20%. This is also about time. So if you are an engineer and you're building a system, then you take very short-term calls, which is I will ship this very quickly. But then if you don't invest 20% of your time in improving long-term health of the system, you're going to end up in crap. Same with entrepreneurship. I can keep solving very, very short-term problems. If we don't invest 20% of time to sort of looking at the long term, we are sort of going to end up in a bad place. And same with money, of course. If you consume all money, then one day you're going to end up in a bad place.
Gaadi chalana hai to fuel to dalna hai. All right. That brings us to the end of this episode of Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS. This podcast, of course, is an initiative by NewsReach. Rajat, thank you so much for joining us and, of course, sharing your insights and experiences on navigating this startup landscape, especially with the next billion users coming from Bharat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our audience for joining in. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel for an inside look into the minds of startup leaders. Till next time, this is your host, Gautam Srinivasan, signing off. Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS, is an initiative of NewsReach in association with VC Circle, produced by HT Smartcast. The director and executive producer of this show is Deepthi Ahuja. The assistant producer is Veda Mohan. The video editor on this show is Kuljit Singh. And the audio editor is Amrinder Singh.